Good morning and welcome to BeefLink TV, your daily dose of industry information. This morning I'm joined by Pawel from our Policy and Compliance team, and we're here today to talk about ENS and international engagement. So firstly, Pawel, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Natalie.
So ENS and international engagement, two seemingly unrelated topics, but we're here to discuss those, but they're actually related. Why is that?
They are related. I mean, we're freight forwarders, so we facilitate international movement of goods, I would say. But why are they seemingly unrelated? Well, on the one hand, we're talking about a technical requirements, so entry summary declarations. That's a legal and technical requirements which will fall on someone within the chain. But the nature of this requirement is quite specific, and I'll tell you a bit more in a minute. What I would like to say, and I would like to remind our members about, is that from the 31st of January, there will be a requirement in place to lodge an entry summary declaration, a so-called ENS. That's a safety and security declaration for safety and security purposes, which will have to be lodged in a separate system that what our members are actually used to. I mean, we're used to CDS. Back in the day, it was Chief. We'll be lodging them in the system called Safety and Security GB, or SNS GB. And members who read BFA Link, and this obviously I encourage members to read BFA Link, may have noticed that over the last few months, we would publish something about safety and security declarations pretty much every month. Why was that? Well, that was simply because we expected that requirement to be in place from the 31st of October this year. Sure. So as you can see, there is a delay, not the first delay as well. No. So I thought I would have to say that. But this time we understand this is going to happen. So my call to members is do not ignore it. This requirement will actually come into play from the 31st of January.
Sure. So how is the entry summary declaration requirement different to, say, a customs entry requirement?
The difference between the two is mostly in the responsibility, or who the responsible party is. Sure. They are declarations. They share quite a lot of data in between them, and members will be able to find data sets for safety and security declarations. At the moment, we're talking about 20 data elements of mandatory requirements. There will be additional and conditional requirements. But the key difference is that the responsibility for lodging an entry summary declaration lies with the carrier. And I'll simplify the definition a little bit. The carrier is whoever controls the active means of transport. And this is where this difference sort of comes into play again, because who controls the active means of transport? With sea or air freight, it will be your shipping or airline.
Sure.
And this requirement has been in place for a long time, and shipping and airlines, they've been filing entry summary declarations for quite a long time. Now, what we're looking at today, though, is road freight. Well, who's going to lodge an entry summary declaration in the road freight environment? Is that going to be a haulier? Is that going to be your driver, who, in most cases, I would imagine, is not even based in the UK? Most of the hauliers crossing the border will be EU-based.
Sure.
Will they understand the requirement? So this is where the difference between the two lies. The responsibility to lodge the entry summary declarations lies with a party which is likely to be not established in the UK.
Sure.
I should probably put it like that.
Yeah, let's go for that. So what do members then need to consider before the 31st of January? Are there a number of things I need to think about?
Well, it's a slightly different take on that, because what members will need to consider is, well, first of all, we'll say this again, the legal responsibility lies with a carrier. And we're mostly looking at road freight. So the first question is, do I want to lodge it on behalf of a haulier? Do I want to become involved in this process? Because we don't have to. The legislation allows us to lodge entry summary declarations, but the legal responsibility lies with the carrier still. Now, if you decide to do that and you do not arrange transport, you're only a customs agent, let's imagine that. All you do is import and export declarations. Sure. You don't necessarily even need to know who the actual haulier, the carrier is. So obviously you have to look at your operational arrangements. If you decide to do that, you're going to have to think about how you want to get the data, how you want to exchange the data, how you want to exchange messages between your office and the carrier, because there may be a requirement to lodge it in another system. There may be, I say that maybe because it's quite important. Do you have the means to do it? Does your software support entry summary declarations? Can you do that? So you have to think about all those practical things, operational procedures, software, and so on and so forth. And I think it's important that we start thinking about it now. So that's why we're talking about it today, even though we're looking at the 31st of January.
Yeah, definitely. So is there a sufficient awareness level on part of, the hauliers that we have, many of which are EU-based? Like, what's the awareness level there? Yeah,
that's the second leg of this discussion in a way. It's international cooperation and what we do in Europe. Some of our members may be aware that we work closely with an organisation called CLECAT, headquartered in Brussels. And CLECAT represents freight forwarders and customs agents in the EU and wider European economic zone, I would probably say. So we will work with CLECAT. We understand that HMRC will work with CLECAT on that very topic, which is raising awareness amongst the haulier, in particular, community in the EU. We'll obviously try and support them. We'll see what we can do in order to raise that awareness, whether there may be some additional webinars. I don't know. We're not quite sure just yet. But the important thing is we will be working with our partners in Europe, be CLECAT, BIFA equivalents in other EU member states, and we'll try to raise that awareness, because what we would like to avoid is the 31st of January comes and nobody really knows what to do.
My last question is, what about our freight forwarders and customs agents in the UK? Is there anything that they need to be made aware of?
Well, they need to understand the requirement in the first place. So they need to understand where they fit in this puzzle. They will need to understand the data requirements, as I mentioned earlier. They will need to look at the operational setup, the software, and make an informed decision about whether they want to get involved, whether they want to participate, whether they want to lodge entry summary declarations, and take it from there. As you are aware now, we will be running, I'm not going to say a series of webinars, but there will be at least a couple of webinars which we'll run together with HMRC. We're planning one in November, second part of November, and then there will be another one in January. These are our plans. But as usual, I encourage members to get in touch with us if they have any questions. We're quite happy to help them, direct them to guidance, which can be found online. There's quite a lot of guidance. We have some concerns about the guidance because on the one hand, there's a lot of that, but it's disjointed, it's dispersed, it's a little difficult to read sometimes. But we're obviously here to help members and hopefully we'll know where we stand.
That's great. Thank you, Pawel, so much for coming in today to talk about it.
Thank you.
As Pawel mentioned, there will be a couple of webinars we have in the pipeline, but please look out for your member communications via email. Alternatively, we will be publicising those events on bifa.org. That's all for today's episode of BIFA Link TV, your daily dose of industry information.